You're tuned into Ronversations, the podcast where real talk meets real change, straight from the heart of Santa Fe. I am your host, Ronald S. Trujillo, candidate for mayor in the 2025 Santa Fe election. Ronversation dives into issues that matter most to our community, from public safety to affordable housing, local jobs to transparent government, and everything in between. No scripts, no spin, just honest dialogue and bold ideas for a resilient Santa Fe. This is a space for open conversation, real solutions, and a shared vision for our city's future. Glad you're here. Let's talk. Buenos dias, Santa Fe, and welcome to Ronversations, Santa Fe Unfiltered. Today, I'm honored to have Santa Fe County Sheriff Adan Mendoza. Adan, muchísimas gracias. Thank you for coming, being part of this.
You bet, Ron. Thanks for the invitation here to just have a genuine and candid conversation about Santa Fe.
Great. You know what, Adan, could you give the listeners a little background about you? You know, born and raised here in Santa Fe. You know, tell us about your whole life here.
Yeah, so, to kind of keep it short, but, I was born and raised in La Cieneguilla, just right outside of Santa Fe, but I consider Santa Fe my home. I went to school here, shopped here, ran around as a little runt here, went to high school here. My family was from here, and we really love Santa Fe. I ended up going to college out of state, 1 year in Kansas, and finished up my degree at University of New Mexico. Started with the sheriff's office in 1998. Did a stint on patrol. Did most of my career in investigations, and then moved up on the chain. I retired in 2016 as the major there, which is third from the top, and then ultimately made a decision to run for sheriff. Ran for sheriff, got elected in 2018, took office in 19, spent my first 4-year term, and then got reelected, and I now have a little less than a year and a half on my second term. So, born and raised in Santa Fe. For those of you that don't remember my mom, Gloria Mendoza, she was a real advocate for Santa Fe, a real voice for Santa Fe, and she was passionate about Santa Fe. She loved the city, she loved the people, and she was very vocal about ensuring that Santa Fe did. It's okay for Santa Fe to change. In her mind, it was okay to Santa Fe to grow. But what she didn't want was for us to lose the traditions,
Most definitely.
the values, the families, and everything that was important that made Santa Fe so unique. And unfortunately, we lost her. It'll be 6 years now in December. We miss her very much, and we're looking to the community and other people here in Santa Fe to be the voice for Santa Fe to do and be passionate as she was.
No, that's one thing your mother was very passionate about her culture, her city. Me and your sister Marcia went to school at Kearney. Back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So so our families go back a long ways. Adan, real quick, what made you want to go into law enforcement? You growing up here in Santa Fe, but the path that you took it. Like I said, you started at the sheriff's department, and you worked your way up. You retired. And then you ran for sheriff. What was that whole motivation, to go into law enforcement?
Well, I'll tell you, I think public service was in my heart. It was something that I wanted to do. I did get my degree in criminology from the University of New Mexico. So, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a police officer. I wasn't sure I wanted to be in law enforcement. I came back and did some odd jobs for a while. I'm sure pretty disappointing to my parents at the time with a degree. But, it took me a while to find my way. I ultimately started at the county in code enforcement as a code enforcement officer, and then went to the permit desk, and then got an opportunity to work for the sheriff's office, and that's all I needed. I needed an opportunity. I loved it. It was something different every day. It was exciting. I got to help people. I got to engage with the public, and it's a gratification that you'll never understand unless you do it, unless you're out doing public service or you're out helping people. There's nothing like it. And so I really wasn't sure I wanted to be in law enforcement, but I was given an opportunity, and I'll tell you, it's been great to me. I went to a Chiefs conference, I think it was last year, and one of the instructors there He was giving a presentation. I think he was a doctor. He had a doctorate. But anyways, he asked this question. He said, if everybody in this room, knowing what we know now, law enforcement, the culture, what's happened with law enforcement nationally, would you do it all over again? And I thought about it for about 2 seconds, and I said, absolutely. I would do it all over again. It's not about the politics. It's not about what people think. It's not about the media. It's about helping people. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. I didn't have to think about it very long. And so, I've enjoyed it. It's been a great career for me.
That's awesome. And same thing, I go look back at my career with the NMDOT. I started there, as a summer aide. You worked your way through it. And it's public service. And, when I ran for city council, back in 2006, it's about giving back to your community. And that's exactly what you've done, in your role, not, only just working with the county, but as sheriff. I mean, people know you. People, and that's the thing that's great is people can just come up to you and say, hey, Adan, how are you? Yes, respectfully, Sheriff Mendoza, but again, too, you're Adan, and, that's the great thing about you. You have that connection to this community, and it's really, and it shows, I mean, with your mother, your father, and you, so it's great. Adan, let's go now, let's break into, I want to talk about the city and the county. I everybody knows I'm running for mayor. My biggest thing is about collaboration. I want to be able to, to whoever is the next police chief, I would like for them to be able to, have those relationships with our sheriffs. They can just call and say, hey, what's going on? It's not about duplication of services, but I think it's always good that the city knows what's going on in the county, and the county knows what's going on in the city. I also want to have that my police chief to have a relationship with the state police and federal as well. I mean, to me, that's what I think sometimes doesn't happen: the talking. Bringing people to the table, having those discussions. And I just want to ask you, what do you think's working between the county and the city? What do you think maybe not working with the county and the city?
So the city and the county get along well, and especially on the patrol level, right? These are the officers that are working with each other every day. And as you go up in through administration, we all get busy taking care of our own departments, worrying about the issues within the city or with our communities within the county. And sometimes that collaboration is not as strong as it should be. And I will say we can always have stronger collaboration. And collaboration is key. Collaboration and communication is key in order to solve community issues when it comes to crime, when it comes to homelessness, when it comes to any public safety issues. Collaboration and communication is key. And I'll be honest with you, we can do a better job of collaborating and communicating, especially on some of these bigger cases and some of these repeat offenders. One thing is that I've always said is that criminals don't abide by boundaries. They don't come to the city limits and stop there. They're going into the county. They're going into other jurisdictions. They're going into Espanola. They're going to Albuquerque. They're coming from Albuquerque. They're coming from other cities, and they're committing crimes and they're victimizing people within our community. And so we need to collaborate. We need to share that information. If we have somebody on our radar, we need to share that information with the city so they can get it on their radar. We need to share that information with the state police so it's on their radar, and then collaborate to hold these people accountable. Whether that means taking them to jail, ensuring that they know that we know what they're up to, and being proactive, right? So we can let them know and being visible, so they don't commit the crimes in the first place. Would be ideal, but collaboration is key. It can be stronger, and that the chief and I have a good relationship.
Wonderful.
I can call the chief anytime and ask him for help, and he can do the same. Now, I will say this, for those that don't know jurisdictional boundaries and whether people have jurisdiction or they don't. The difference between the sheriff's office and the city is the sheriff deputies or the sheriff's office can and has authority within the city limits. If we see a crime that's occurred, a motor vehicle infraction, anything that's against the law, we can enforce that. We can make traffic stops. We can make arrests. We can work cases all within the city limits. The difference is the city cannot. The city cannot operate in the county, and that's a little bit of a hindrance.
And is it because, like I said, here you have the city of Santa Fe, but yet you have the county,
Right.
which is an umbrella technically over the entire city of
Right.
Santa Fe. So that's where that
Yeah,
comes into
the city is within the boundaries of Santa Fe County,
Yes.
so we'd have jurisdiction there. And then, of course, state police, they have jurisdiction anywhere in the state.
Yes.
So when you're talking about jurisdiction, but we've been short-staffed, and we've been under under a lot of had a resource. I don't want to say undermanned because there's men and women that are working, but there's we've been a lack of resources, a lack of deputies. We were down about almost 30% of our workforce post-COVID, and it took us a long time to dig out of that hole. And so it's very difficult for us to come in and work with the city or work within the city limits, even when we're requested to, because our responsibility is 2,000 square miles of the county, and you got tribal jurisdictions within that. You got small villages and other communities within the county that are all expecting the sheriff's office to be present and be visible. And so it's very difficult sometimes to come in and work within the city limits, although we will. And if the city, we've collaborated on some operations, but I think we need to do more. I really do. And we do. The Agua Fria village is unincorporated.
Yes.
And so the sheriff's office is the primary law enforcement within the Agua Fria village, and so we are in here. But I will touch on one thing that I think is very important, could be a useful tool, is that is cross commissioning of Santa Fe police officers. We've talked about it. It's been brought to the table. We've sent them a template in order to come to an agreement for cross commissions, which would mean that I would commission city police officers to operate. They probably wouldn't be going all over Santa Fe County, but at least in the adjoining area.
Like say over 599 and all that.
Over
where it becomes county.
right in within wherever they need to do their job. I mean, the city, these criminals are could be coming into the city, committing crimes, and then going out into the county.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. So say there's a police chase on 599.
Right.
Still, started here in the city of Santa Fe. Well, all of a sudden, if that car then shoots over into the county, it now jurisdiction falls under you as the sheriff's officer. The city police can still follow and make arrests, can they?
I won't talk to their policies, because I'm not exactly sure what their pursuit policy is, but a police chase could start in the city of Santa Fe and end up in Espanola.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I think it's important and more important for investigations and activities where criminals may go out into outside the city limits, that the Santa Fe police be able to operate in there.
Yes.
And unfortunately, sometimes these cross commissions get tied up in red tape and legal issues,
bureaucracy,
and liability.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping at some point, whether it falls within my next year and a half of my term or not, hopefully it does, that we can cross commission the Santa Fe Police Department. And so when they call us, we can help them, and they can also come out into the county and help us, or conduct investigations or do enforcement if they need to.
Well, let me tell you this. When I'm mayor, we're definitely going to have this conversation, and we're going to get this thing done, because I think that's a great idea. I think, it's something that should have probably been done a long time ago, but it's good to hear this, because, these are things running for mayor, need to understand. Adan, let me talk to you about, you were talking about that you were almost 30%, down on your workforce. What were you guys able to do at the county to recruit, more sheriffs?
So let me tell you some of the things that we did, which worked, and they are working, and they were unconventional. I was approached by a sergeant and a corporal at my agency and said, "Hey, Sheriff, we've looked at a schedule, and at the time we were working 12-hour schedules, which was very difficult for deputies. They were long days, and a high percentage of our workforce lives in Rio Rancho, so they got a 45-minute to an hour commute. They're working 12 hours, and then their 45-minute or an hour commute back. So that's a 14-hour day, and that doesn't even take into consideration if they get a late call and they have to work to finish that call, right? And that's concerning. It's a safety issue
Yes.
too. You don't want people on the road that have been working, for 14, 16 hours. But anyways, we were getting a lot of complaints. We were getting officers leaving because of the 12-hour shifts. So I got approached by a sergeant and a corporal, and they said, "Hey, Sheriff, Golden, Colorado is working on this schedule. It's a pilot schedule right now, and it's called the 4-8-40. And basically what it is their officers are working 32 hours, but getting paid for 40. And when they first said that, I was like, well, I don't think there's any way that the county is going to go for that, right? Either HR or the county manager. I don't know how that's going to work. In my mind, I wasn't sure, and I was pretty skeptical about the whole schedule. And what they explained is these officers, in order to get their 40 hours, were given an hour before their shift and an hour after their shift to concentrate on physical fitness, mental health, something that is benefiting them mentally, physically, emotionally, and they were given administrative leave for that time.
Okay.
So they're given 2 hours of administrative leave per day. They come in and work 8 hours, and so they're working 32 hours and getting paid for 40. When we did this pilot program, we decided that we were going to get a bunch of statistics that we were going to look at: productivity, we were going to look at some crime rates, and employee satisfaction, how it was affecting our recruiting and retention, and we were going to we're going to analyze all that information. It was a 6-month pilot program. At the end of 6 months, we realized that productivity was up, sick leave was down, overtime was down, employee satisfaction was up. We weren't losing deputies. The deputies were really happy and really satisfied with the schedule.
Wow.
And the fact that they could concentrate on themselves, because there's a lot of stress that comes with law enforcement and public safety.
Well, I would think that
Yeah.
after a day on the job, you have that hour to at least decompress.
Exactly.
I think that's a great thing. Yeah. So have you been able to recruit more officers now?
Yeah, to answer your question, we're fully staffed.
Wow.
100%, and we have people actually in line and in the hopper, waiting to come in. And we filled. I think when we started this program, we had 25 openings, and we filled every single one of them. And some from other jurisdictions. Unfortunately, you hate to pull certified officers from other jurisdictions,
But it happens.
You don't want to hurt it. It happens. We've recruited from the Santa Fe Police Department. They've recruited from us, and and there's people from out of state that have come. I think partly or mostly in part to the new schedule. So it's been amazing, and we've just focused on I consider the sheriff's office a family. I tell people they're part of the family. I always tell people family first, and then work. And I'll say this, and I say it to everybody. When a deputy starts at our agency, I always ask them, how does your family feel about you being in law enforcement? Do you have their support of your family and your spouse? Because if you don't have that, then you won't make it very far in this career, because you'll have something tugging you away from this career, from public safety. And I'm going to go one step further, and I'm going to say family, the support of the family, your spouse, and the community. If you don't have the community support either, you won't want to work here. You want the community to support you, and there should be a mutual respect.
Yes.
Between law enforcement and the community. We respect the community, and the community should respect us. And I think there's been a breakdown in that over the years. And how do we get back to that is very important. How do we re-engage the community? How do we get that mutual respect? So when they engage with us, when they talk to us, and we talk to them, it's like we're all one community, and not us against them.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think over these last few years, unfortunately, sometimes law enforcement gets a bad rap. And yes, you will have your bad apples. I know that, within anything, but I would, growing up, we were always, hey, you respect the police, they're there to protect you. On my street when I was growing up, we had, two police officers living there. We had a state police officer living on the street. It was nice because, we felt safe because you would see those cop cars in the driveways. We thought, hey, nobody's going to come down, my street
Right.
to mess. And that's the whole thing that I want to. Hopefully, I'd like to see getting back to, because I remember growing up here, playing baseball, playing football. A lot of, guess what the coaches were? They were police officers. They were sheriffs. I'd love to come back to that, but I do understand that, like you just said, a lot of officers, sheriffs are living in Rio Rancho. They're living in outlying cities because it's cheaper. These are the things me as a mayor, we have to find ways that we, affordable housing, retention of our officers. I've always said, I want to make the city of Santa Fe a place where you want to come work, you want to start your career, and you want to end your career. With you, it was a 20-year, right?
I'll have 20 when I finish my term. I'll have 27 years.
27, but at the time,
Yeah, at the time.
now
When I
it's
retired.
25
Yeah,
years, right?
yep, it's 25
when you're
years.
coming in, so things have changed with PERA, all
Right.
that stuff. But when you see someone like yourself, who you've 27 years to the same department, that says something for you. And that's the whole thing. I want to make the city of Santa Fe is a place where, when you wake up in the morning, I'm coming to a place where I want to work. I'm respected. That's the whole thing. Is I think is happening at the city of Santa Fe, because I've talked to a lot of people. They're not happy with what's going on. And this isn't law enforcement. This is other departments here in the city where they're not happy. And that's the whole mentality. That's the whole culture I want to change. As to first I got to go in there and find out the whole root of what's going on. But I want to change that culture to say, hey, what, you're respected. This is a place we want you to work. I've always said, a happy employee is a productive employee.
Absolutely.
And that's what you want. You want to create a work environment, and you want a work environment as well. You want a career ladder. That's one thing that I always said at the New Mexico Department of Transportation. There was a career ladder for me. Those are the things that sometimes I hear. Well, there's no career ladder for me here at the city for that. These are the things I definitely want to look into. Is that each department. How do we create those career ladders so that we keep people here instead of them bolting for the county, bolting for Los Alamos, different places. So these are things. And also on that same note, Santa Fe is getting bigger. Those are the things that I also want to look at is we're going to have to hire more police officers. And like the numbers right now, I know they're not fully staffed now, but as the city grows, we're going to need more officers. So these are the things we need to make sure that the city of Santa Fe is appealing, for those recruits to say, hey, I want to raise my family here. But again, too, we got to look at schools. We got to look at housing. There's a whole realm of things we have to look at in order to make Santa Fe the place that people want to come and work.
Absolutely, and you've touched on a lot of key points. Yes, the sheriff's office, we're doing a staffing study right now, and I'm assuming that we're gonna need. They're gonna say we need more deputies, which I already know that we do, but this will be backed by an actual study. And you're right, the city's growing. There's and the county's growing. There's a lot of you can see these apartment and housing complexes going up and subdivisions. Well, somebody's got to serve them. Somebody's got to patrol them. And the more people, the more officers you're going to need. But we want officers living here. I mean, we're going to need more officers, but we don't need more officers living in Rio Rancho. We need more officers living in the city of Santa Fe, invested here, spending money here, sending their kids to school here, coaching here, giving back, right? Coaching here, or volunteering to nonprofits.
Well, that's what you just mentioned. I mean, paycheck. You're working here, you're getting your paycheck here, but guess where that money is getting spent? In Albuquerque, Rio Rancho.
Yes.
We definitely want to keep those GRTs, here in the city.
Yeah, and we realized when we did some of the analytics for this new schedule is that we had officers leaving, and it wasn't because they were paying more. They were going to Rio Rancho, which was paying less than us. So it wasn't necessarily about the money. It was about you hear this all the time. It's a nationwide thing: quality of life, right? Spending more time with their family. Spending more time for themselves. It wasn't about the money. They were leaving to get paid less, but they were closer to home, less commute time, more time for themselves. And so we gotta, I always say this, in my agency, the public is priority number one, and then it's our employees, and it should be equal. But I say sometimes what benefits the public doesn't necessarily benefit the sheriff's office or our deputies.
Yeah.
But we got, we're in public service. They're our customers. They're why we do this job. So they're the priority. But we got to invest in our employees. And like you said, work environment, quality of life, how they're treated, and things like that is very important to me. I think that's what's most important to me as an employee. When I was an employee, is how I was treated, the work environment, how supervisors supervise, how they treated you as a human being, and things like that. That's more important to me than $1 more or $2 more.
Most definitely, yeah.
And that's what, and I think, I think we can do a better job of doing that and find different ways to do that, to treat our, to make sure our employees feel taken care of, and they're a resource, and they're important for the city.
No, most definitely.
And the county also.
Oh yeah, no. And one of the things when I was on the council, about trying to retain officers here, we were looking at purchasing like homes, some here in the Balmain area, throughout the city. Maybe there's a possibility that the city would purchase that home, it'd be in our inventory. Then we could offer it to either police officer or one of our firefighters, to give them that opportunity to, at a lower rental rate, so they could raise money, save the money actually, so that later on in maybe 3 years, they were able to buy a house, and we'd want them to buy a house here in Santa Fe. So, so these are the things I want to start looking at, the city, and again too, we may, these houses may be in the county. It's still you're still within the the city limits, and like I understand you talk about, you want your officers in case there is a big emergency. You want them here at when you call them, instead of having to wait that hour for them to come in case there is a big emergency. That's a big thing.
And talk about collaboration. I think that's, it can't be just a city problem, and it can't be just a county problem financially, or the burden on them. It's got to be, I think it's got to be between the county and the city to invest in affordable housing. And I it blows my mind, Ron. I always hear affordable housing, but nobody can ever really say what does affordable mean.
It's never been it's never, how can I say the word? When I was running for
who can afford it?
Exactly, because what's affordable to you
right.
may not be affordable to me, may not be affordable to that person. That's the whole thing. Affordability has never been defined because we're all in different tax brackets.
Right.
So somebody's making $60,000. Are they going to be able to afford a house payment? Those are the things that we as a city, we as a county, we need to work harder on. And I look at the county. I mean, the county is building. I see them building houses. I see them building apartments, and and that's what I don't see as much houses being built here in the city. I do see more apartments, and that's the whole thing that I want to get back to is, we need the affordable housing. We were just talking about Midtown, and within that Midtown, housing is supposed to be available, affordable housing for our police, for our first responders. These are things we need to look at, and how do we do that? How do we make this happen? Because as you know, Midtown is moving at a turtle's pace right now. Right. These are things, when I get into office, I definitely want to speed things up, and I want the public, the citizens, to say, hey, look, something's actually happening over there. So these are the things, and again too, making sure that it's a safe place.
Right.
That everybody says that's going to be a new community gathering place, but it's got to be a safe place. Yes. That's the whole thing. I've always said, public safety is probably the most important thing that a city can give to its citizens. And we got to be on the same page as to how do we make sure that all parts of the city are treated equally and protected. Sometimes I do get from people, well, this side of town gets more protection, this side of town doesn't. This so that's the thing. It's just trying to to balance that. And as mayor, that's what I definitely want to do. But I want the people in Santa Fe to know what public safety. That's one of the top priorities of my administration. Ensuring this city is safe for, like you just said,
yep.
for a high quality of life for our citizens.
I agree, and and the service should be the same whether you live on the east side of Santa Fe, whether you live in whatever part of the county.
Mm-hmm.
When you call, and I'll tell you, one of the main focuses at the sheriff that I've tried to focus on at the sheriff's office is the basics. When somebody calls, they expect somebody to show up and listen to their complaint, investigate their case, make an arrest if it's necessary, and when the deputy or the officer leaves, that they feel safe. They feel like it's been thoroughly investigated.
They were listened to.
They were listened to, and they got their report filed. It's the basics. We hear about technology and and intel centers and fusion centers and surveillance and shot spotter and all this other stuff. I get that. We want to keep up with technology, but I'll tell you what, the basics. When somebody calls, a deputy shows up or an officer shows up, they're treated with respect, their report is taken and it's investigated and they're communicated with to let them know what's going on in the process. I harp on our investigators, call the victim back, let them know what's going on. There's nothing worse than being victimized, because for them it's the biggest thing, it's the biggest priority, right? Your house gets broken into, it's the biggest priority, and it should be the biggest priority for law enforcement at the time. And we're working a ton of cases.
Yes.
But as a victim, it's very traumatizing. It's invasion of your sacred space, your house, your home, especially if somebody's broken in. And I understand that. And we as law enforcement owe it to the victims in our community to communicate with them and say, hey, look, either we're still working on it, we haven't got any leads, but something, until it's done or there's nothing else to do, or it's adjudicated, somebody's arrested and it's adjudicated through the criminal justice system, communication is key. Because if you don't communicate, they don't know, and then they don't feel safe because they feel like nothing's getting done. But I've tried to just concentrate on the basics, and it has its pros and cons, because we don't focus on other high technology areas, but I say it's like a pothole, right?
Yeah.
Before you build more streets, people care about the potholes that are in the current ones.
Exactly.
And it's a basic thing. Fill the potholes and people are happy. Respond to calls, take reports, and investigate them and communicate. That is the basis of law enforcement. And I've really tried to focus on that, and that's worked. In my opinion, has worked. And of course, we're doing technology and all the other stuff too, but that's not the priority.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I've heard. There was discussion about here at the city of Santa Fe Police. About the noise reduction,
Right.
the like you just said, the spotter. I guess that so
The shot spotter.
The shot spotter. So these technology. And that's the thing that I most definitely I want to be able to give the Santa Fe Police Department these tools. To me, any training, any tools that the police officers need, I want to give it to them, because as I said, I'm not a police officer.
Right.
I do not know what you need to make your job easier, but also at the same time to make you safer. So when I sometimes hear there are times when you had blowback from other, well, the police don't need that. That's just another toy they need. I said, whoa, you're not the police officer. You don't know what what you call a toy is a vital part of their equipment that they need to be protected. So these are the things that I tried to convey sometimes to my colleagues when I was on the council, when we had issues about buying a certain vehicle and all that. And I would say, wait a minute, listen to what our police officers are saying. There's a reason. They're not just saying it just because it's the newest fandangle thing. They're bringing it before us because it's a tool that they need to either protect themselves or to protect the public.
Yeah, and and that's great, Ron. And you've always been, you've always listened and had that voice of reason and just some common sense. Mm-hmm. You leave public safety or police work to the professionals.
Yes.
To people that have been here, 20, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. We know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We know what works best. We don't buy toys, we buy tools.
Exactly.
And I'll be honest with you, we don't purchase anything, of course, through the county or present it to the commission without some justification of
Most
why
definitely.
we need it, right? And there is justification.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna. This is taxpayer money. It's got to be used responsibly, and there's got to be justification for what we're doing.
Exactly.
But I will tell you, there's some tools that we we purchase, and maybe they don't get used as often, and that's great. If we purchase a SWAT vehicle and it stays parked there and we don't ever have to use it, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But when we do need it,
it's there.
It's there, and it's going to be a very important tool for officer safety, for community safety, for response, and so we need to be prepared.
Yeah.
And
this is the good thing and this is what I like you saying. For those people who are out there listening, because I know there are some people that say, well, no, listening to you say it may never get used. We hope it never gets used.
Exactly.
But if that time comes and it needs to be used, we have it. So to me that's a huge deal. Having you're prepared in case you're prepared for the worst case.
Yeah, and you have to be, especially in public safety. There's a lot of unknowns. The world we live in now with active shooter, school threats, and everything that's going on, you have to be prepared.
Growing up, I mean, when we were, if somebody pulled a fire alarm, you got out of school, but our world has completely changed. It's so scary and it's so sad when you see all these school shootings, happening throughout. We've had them here in New Mexico as well.
Yeah.
And these are things. I am. Thank God we do have our police officers here who are the ones who are going to run there. To protect us.
Yeah.
So it's very important. And that's the thing that I try to convey to everybody. Go up to a police officer, go up to a sheriff. Talk to them. Say, hey, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do for our community, because it's important that they know that, because, I'm sure it feels good when people come up to you and say, Adan, your deputies, you yourself, this is what they did for me. I'm grateful for that. It makes you feel good. And I know it makes you feel proud as sheriff, hey, these are my guys, that I'm leading, and they're doing this bang up job.
And we probably get more compliments than we do complaints. We get complaints. People are speeding, or an officer, didn't handle a situation, quite like they should have, or whatever, and that's okay. What I don't like is there's stuff happening nationally with police. Let's go back to the George Floyd issue, and there was a lot of things that that gave a black eye to law enforcement all across the country.
Well, I would hear people say defund the police. Yeah. I mean,
And I think there was like grumblings in the city and in the county about oversight for police, and I'm like, listen, we don't have that problem. Don't watch national news and equate it to what's happening in Santa Fe. Come and talk to us. Come and talk to the sheriff. Go talk to the chief. Ask them if this is happening. And there's been unfortunate incidents of officers involved shootings, and that's a totally unfortunate loss of life or situation. Nobody wants that to happen. And when you look back at things, some of them are justified. Sometimes we can do things better. But we analyze that. I guarantee you, nobody wants to be involved in that. And we're our worst critics. Law enforcement is, and we're our worst critics, especially when there's an officer that's doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. If there's misconduct, I'm the first one to hold people accountable.
Yeah, the buck stops with you.
Yeah, and we demand that from our law enforcement, is accountability. But don't equate what's happening in the country to Santa Fe. We're very unique. We have a great sheriff's office. We have a great police department, and we just got to build on that. Mm-hmm. We got to build on it. We don't want to tear them down. We just want to build on the good things and improve on the things that need to be improved.
Exactly. That to me, that's the whole thing. Yeah. That was what I'm talking about is the collaboration. Right. If it's not working, what do we need to do to turn it around to make it start working better? I don't see a lot of issues, but like I said, these are the issues that as mayor I want to tackle. I want to have that input from the police officers. That's one thing I think. You know me. I'm very approachable. I'm not one of these. You can meet with me once a month. No, you can come to my office. I want to meet with you. I want to hear from my police officers. What's wrong? What's going on? Because that's the only way we fix it. If we don't have the dialogue, we don't talk. We're clueless. We won't know what's going on. So that's the thing. And I think people know that with me. I'm very an approachable person, just like you're a very approachable person. People know you and all that. They know you as Adan.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on here talking about public safety and talking about the issues in law enforcement, because in order to help fix it or help improve on it, you have to understand it, and you got to talk to the people that are experiencing it every day. You can read the newspaper, you can watch the news, but nobody knows it better than law enforcement themselves.
Yeah. People think there's a book. No.
Yeah,
you live it 24/7.
That's right. We see it. Our deputies are responding to it. They're dealing with the aftermath to it. There's a lot of community issues, and some of the things that we respond to aren't police issues. We shouldn't be responding to, but it's become a police problem, and we got to figure out how we can do a better response to things like that.
Awesome.
To mental health issues, to people that have addiction issues. We enforce the law, and of course we're there to help in emergencies, but we're not counselors. We're not addiction experts. We got to leave that up to somebody else that can help.
But not law enforcement. But that's where the collaboration between law enforcement and these organizations, that's where you have those you're not the expert in that, you're an expert in law enforcement, they're the experts there, but to have that at least understanding of what's going on, how would you handle this situation in a different place. So no, that's good. And those are the things, like I said, the collaboration, bringing people to the table, bringing the experts to the table, so that we have the dialogue, but so that we're all on the same page. That's what I want to do, is I want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
And we've come a long way. We've come a long way with services for mental health and addiction. I will say that. Back 15 years ago, there was two options. A person, if you were dealing with a person, you either went to jail or they took you to the hospital. Mm-hmm. There was no in between. Now, there's other services. We got the mobile mental health and mobile crisis and things like that, and that's great. But we got to keep building on that. Mm-hmm. We got to keep building on places to treat individuals and get them the help that they need. And I'll be honest with you. We should be helping the people that are asking for help, and the question is what do we do with the people that don't want help, that continue to commit crimes, that have been given every opportunity for treatment, for services, and they refuse to do it. I don't know. Is incarceration the answer? It may be.
Well, that comes from the courts.
Yeah, it might be.
And unfortunately, sometimes you have this revolving door. Right. You guys are doing the best job you can to ensure that the public's is safe, but when it gets to the courts, legalities, people get out. Sometimes people get off on technicalities. Yeah. And all they do is come and offend again. It's a hard job, Adan. No doubt you do have you don't have an easy job, but you do your job very well, and you're well respected.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Adan, is there anything else you would like to say just to close out? I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been, informative, and, a lot of things. I'm saying you have a year and a half left, I guess, on your term.
Yeah, I do. And,
okay.
Yeah.
So when I win for mayor, I'll take office in January. So we'll still have that 1 year. And
we can get some stuff done.
Exactly.
Some of the things that we talked
most definitely, because these are the things that I want to be able to, to collaborate with you, because sometimes it's eye-opening. Because these are some things that I don't know that you know, and again, I just want that collaboration, that mutual respect between city, county, because like I said, we're neighbors, we're brothers, we're sisters. We want to be able to do that. So, anything else, Adan? Or
I don't. Again, Ron, I just appreciate you having this conversation. Having the willingness to listen, so you have a better understanding. If and when you do win for mayor. And so you can work on some of these issues that I've talked about. I know you've had Gary and Eric on I listened to that podcast too, and
I've had Sam Bregman on.
Yeah, so. and I think we've talked about a lot of the same things, and I think it's because
you guys are the experts.
Yeah. And I think it's very clear. I think we're all on the same page.
Most
it's
definitely.
Just like, how do we, but you got to take one issue at a time. Mm-hmm. They always say, like, what's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't eat the whole thing at once, right? You got to just pick a priority, pick a project, pick a service, and focus on that.
Most definitely.
And then get that done, and then move on to the next. I think sometimes we just shotgun blast everything. We don't put enough effort. We don't put enough commitment into things, and then they fall apart. And if we could just focus on one priority at a time, I think we could get a lot more done.
We definitely, and we're going to get a lot done. Definitely. Adan, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you.
Santa
Thank you,
Fe.
everybody.
Till we meet again. Adios.